All right, well, I am thrilled to introduce our moderator for today. We have Aaron Alexander, who is a solutions engineer at Restaurant 365. He began working in restaurants at the age of 16 and worked his way up from delivery driver to store manager, which he continued to do for just over 7 years. He also successfully ran his own barbecue catering company with his brother in Austin, Texas. Aaron has been with Restaurant 365 since 2018 and started as a support rep and quickly moved to the implementation team where he onboarded over 200 restaurant groups. He now has found his home on the solutions engineer team. Outside of work, Aaron loves to play golf, go fishing, and watch baseball. Joining Aaron today, we have Kristen Sandhurst, CPA. She's the CFO of Adado Brands, overseeing Taco John's and Slim Chicken's locations. With over 9 years of experience in the restaurant industry, along with a background in public accounting and banking financial technology, Kristen has a deep knowledge of what it takes to run successful restaurants. Raised in a Taco John's family, she's passionate about optimizing systems for success, which she supports through her website, Restaurant Toolbox. Kristen lives in South Dakota with her husband and 2 children. Also joining them today is Kevin O'Bold, who serves as the VP of Finance of Ultra Steak and is responsible for the management of accounting, payroll, and IT departments at the support center. He joined the company in 2014 as a staff accountant and also served as a senior staff accountant and controller before assuming his current role. Kevin received his bachelor's degree in accounting and MBA from Anderson University and is actively involved in local community organizations surrounding Fishers, Indiana. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. I'll pass it off to you, Aaron, to go over the agenda and the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for joining us today. So excited to have Kevin and Kristen here to share some of their, firsthand knowledge and experience with some real-time reporting. So our agenda for today, we're going to start off with a little bit about the state of the restaurant industry, just to kind of position ourselves as to, why is real-time reporting more important than it's ever been, right? So we'll go through some state of the industry piece. We'll also talk about some of the challenges that come from operating without those real-time insights. I'm sure a lot of you out there have some of those challenges in mind already. You may be experiencing those things from day to day. So we'll talk about those challenges a little more in depth. Then I'm going to go through some real-time reporting with Restaurant 365, namely things that I've seen personally over the last 7 years that have been super beneficial for our customers, right? So I want to go through some things that I've just keyed in on as things that normally take us a lot longer to get to than they should. And we'll go through some of those reports today. And then we're going to go to our fireside chat with Kristen and Kevin and let them talk about some of the things that they've experienced, right? And we'll go through some real life examples of things that they've learned and done over the years with some of this real time reporting. And then at the end, we'll kick it over for some Q&A that comes straight from you. Awesome. Well, let's get started. So let's start with a little state of the restaurant industry. I seriously doubt this will be news to any of you because we all know what's going on out there, right? So state of the restaurant industry, obviously we've seen rising costs and shrinking margins. Has this been a trend for a while now? Obviously, right? So rising costs and shrinking margins, that leaves us with volatile food costs. That's challenging our margins, making it more important than ever to be able to kind of act on our feet, right? We need to see where our most profitable items are as quickly as possible. There's tons of other ways that we can kind of angle this reporting to ensure that we're putting as many dollars on the bottom line as we can. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today is what's really going to allow us to just capitalize on these margins that we can really capitalize on there. Rising labor costs strain our profitability. So just another aspect of, we've got to pay our people competitive wages to get people in the door to come work for us. In turn, that drives down our profit, right? That drives down our margins. So having that insight into where we can cut here and there and just manage that labor a little more effectively is going to drive more dollars to that bottom line for us. Another thing we're seeing is uncertain customer spending, right? As inflation happens, dining habits tend to change. So real-time sales tracking is obviously going to be super important. Having accurate sales forecasting so that we can look from year over year, week over week to see this is how the trend appears to be happening. So the more accurate those sales forecasts are, the more accurately we can schedule. But again, we can build the perfect schedule. And if the sales don't happen, we need to be ready to, again, act on our feet and make those changes at any moment. Balancing competitive pricing with profitability. That's a big one. We talk about this a lot. In fact, I'll be talking about this in New Orleans this weekend at our big event. Uh, Managing that menu, right? And we're not saying changing your prices every week, but understanding what items are the most profitable at any given time. When we need to do price changes, having that reporting available to us, not spending weeks on end trying to figure out how we should price our menu, right? So kind of balancing that line there between competitive pricing and profitability. And lastly, what we're seeing is the need for agility. So quick adaptation to market shifts is critical. So again, if I'm waiting a month to figure out that something's not working or I need to make changes, we're probably already too late, right? So being able to make those changes a lot more quickly and get that feedback as quickly as possible is going to put us in the best possible position to drive those dollars to the bottom line. And then real-time insights prevent outdated decision making, right? And that kind of goes along that same line. If it takes me 2 months to truly cost out my menu and understand where my cogs are, that information is already outdated, right? If it takes me 2 weeks after the period to get my P&L and see that we really messed up food cogs this last month, that's too late. We're just kind of going, hey, better luck this month, I guess, right? So getting that insight a lot more quickly in real time is going to prevent those outdated decision making. Awesome. Quick poll for us here.
Yep, let me go ahead and put that up for you. Wait 1 second, I'm having an issue with the poll. Why don't we just go ahead and continue and see if we can come back to this poll, Aaron?
Okay, no worries.
Sorry
Just
about
let me
that.
know. Not
Okay.
a problem. All right. So operating without real-time insight. So again, I think given kind of what we went through with state of the restaurant industry, I'm sure some of you already feel some of these things, but let's go through and talk about some of the main key challenges we see that happen when we're operating without those real-time insights. So some of the key challenges: lack of visibility into sales, food costs, and labor expenses, right? If I have the ability to see sales, food costs, labor expenses once a month, really, right? True finalized numbers once a month. Again, we kind of consider that just like looking back in time, retroactive, and saying, hey, let's try to be better next month. Whereas if I could have that information daily or even weekly, right? We're then able to make those adjustments as needed throughout that week. If I know where my cogs are the first week of a period, then I have time to adjust, realign, reprioritize, right? And hopefully get to those goals at the end. So that lack of visibility into those metrics is obviously challenging us to make those kind of data-driven decisions. Delayed or outdated reports leading to reactive decision making. So same, right? Retroactive, kind of looking back and saying, man, this could have been better, that could have been better, rather than looking forward and being able to adjust. Missed opportunities for cost savings and operational improvements. So this kind of drives to the daily aspect of this, in my opinion, and also some of our other tools, potentially things like using purchase orders to understand what we're ordering, when we're ordering, and how much of it we are ordering. So being a little more proactive in areas like that, but also getting things like actual versus theoretical reporting on a weekly basis. That gives us that ability to see where we're missing the mark on an item level detail and then prioritize those items the next week so we can fix those issues before they kind of snowball up into a true problem in the restaurant. Last, direct impact on profitability and operational performance. So again, if I'm going to run a 40% COGS this month and I don't get my P&L until 2 weeks after, the period. How can I run better than a 40% COGS, right? So I think that's where we see folks getting to. And, my experience here as a customer success manager, a lot of my customers were getting those P&Ls out to their managers weekly, right? So one thing that does for us is one, it breaks down the wall between accounting and operations. It really allows us to be working from that same set of numbers. So we don't have to wait for anything to happen before I can get those meaningful reports. We also don't have to pull a report that potentially will be different from what we get later on from accounting, right? So we're breaking down that wall. And again, we're getting ownership from our managers because we're giving them these meaningful reports on a weekly basis. They're able to take more ownership and they have more buy-in into the success of the restaurant. So those are ways that we're seeing direct impact on that profitability and operational performance within the restaurants. Awesome. All right. So real-time reporting, key to smarter operations. So I want to go through a couple of things that I lined out here, just again, things I've seen over the years that a lot of folks are taking advantage of to really get those real-time insights. So first, I want to start with a dashboard that we use in the operations piece of our software. Now, this is really going to focus on our operations dashboard, which is available with our operations module. With certain POS systems, we do have the ability to update this every 15 minutes, right? 15 to 30 minutes. So that gives us extremely real-time data to dive into all in one place. So some of that data that we would be diving into would be things like our labor metrics, right? So we can see things like scheduled overtime, optimal labor variance. We can even see check information, guest count, third-party delivery, and sales by order mode. So we're getting all of that detail kind of at the top of this dashboard just to be able to see, okay, are the sales at this location going in the direction that they should be? Right below that, we're able to pull an hourly labor analysis. So this hourly labor analysis is an actual versus scheduled labor, right? So this is showing me hour over hour what my scheduled labor was, what my actual labor was. We're also working in an optimal labor number, which is basically your actual sales versus our labor matrix. So that's going to tell you, well, you scheduled this way, but based on the sales you actually did, here's what would have been optimal. So you'll be able to see when we hover over these, which this is a screenshot. I don't have the hover here, but when we hover over, we'll be able to see all of those numbers and understand, man, I really should have only had 5 hours of labor here instead of 7. So diving into those daily and also hourly gives us that ability to not have to be maybe the smartest manager you've ever had in your restaurant, right? Because this is going to kind of give me the answers. Hey, my sales aren't going where we thought they were. My labor obviously needs to be adjusted so that I can cut some labor, hit those sales, and hit my labor goal at the end of the day. Now that takes me to kind of the bottom of this dashboard, which would be our sales analysis. My favorite view of this is the hour by hour. There is a day part view as well where you can see breakfast, lunch, dinner, or however your day is set up in the restaurant. But this hour by hour will give us hourly sales versus either our forecast or the prior week. I like to run it versus the forecast because that's what I'm scheduling to. So I can see all the hours with the trophies. I exceeded what my forecast was, right? So I forecasted 800 and did 1200. Any hours where I did not exceed that, like 3 o'clock, I could go back over to my labor and just double check. Hey, did I cut labor at this time? Did my labor go higher than it was supposed to during this hour? And then we're able to pinpoint hourly, right? Not just, oh, you missed the mark yesterday. No, you missed the mark at 3 p.m., right? So we can dive into that detail and then get actionable kind of items out of that. Awesome. Now, another one, which I think everyone just about by now has heard of, is our actual versus theoretical reporting, right? So being able to get this on your count cycle. So if we do weekly counts, we'll be pulling this report every week. On my screen right now is kind of our summary level version where we can see categories: food, liquor, beer, wine, NA Bev, retail. And this would all be set up to how your business runs, right? But we can see that summary level detail, and we can see beginning count. So how much did I have last week? Purchases, ending count, right? There's also a transfer line in here. So if we move product from store to store, if we have multiple restaurants, that'll be represented here as well. So that gives us our actual usage. So with this report, we're able to see how much food we're actually using in the restaurant week over week. Now that theoretical usage number is going to come from our POS integration, having those menu items tied to our recipes. So if I have menu items, the POS buttons linked to our recipes, we're calculating a theoretical usage every single day. So we know how many dollars you should have used in this category. Now, again, given that this is a screenshot, I can't drill into this, but if I expand out under food, it would break into subcategories like produce, dairy, meat, whatever categories we have. So we can really pinpoint down to see where's my biggest variance, right? So we've got a $480 variance in our liquor, beer, wine. So we can take that all the way down to the item level, right? So when we get to the item level, like right here, we see dairy, and I can look at this by quantity. I can see I started with 10 pounds of butter. I purchased 30, and I ended with 17. So my actual usage was 22 pounds, and my theoretical usage was very close to that, only 0.2 off, right? So we can dive all the way into that detail. And then these are also clickable links. So you can click into that purchase of 30 and it'll show you the invoices that calculated up to that number. Awesome. One of my favorite reports, again, getting that weekly, identify an issue, put it on a daily count the next week. We've now fixed that problem and we can start to kind of capitalize on that real-time reporting and make those changes that are necessary. Awesome. Now I threw this one in here because menu costing over the years is one thing, not just that has really been something that I've dealt with a lot, but it's something that comes up all the time with every different restaurant. Whether you've got one location, 500 locations, doesn't matter. Everyone talks about menu costing, menu engineering, right? I've met folks over the years that take a whole summer, 2 or 3 months, to evaluate their menu. That means pulling in all the ingredients, building out all the quantities, usually in Excel, doing all of the costing, and then doing a price comparison to see, well, here's my margin, here's my cost percentage. So here's how much I'm making. Here's my profit every time I make this item, right? Now, having a report like the menu item analysis, which is what this report comes from, that you could pull every week, every day if you wanted to, and see that information up to date as of yesterday is obviously extremely invaluable. I always say, like, it's not like I'm going to change my prices every day. However, if I pull a report like this and I see, hey, this item has the highest margin, makes me the most money every time I sell it, that's going to be my chalkboard special this week. That might be different next week, but that allows us to just pull that report, see, hey, this is going to drive the most dollars to my bottom line. So I'm going to promote that item this week. That's a simple change we can do. And that might be $2 every button press, right? That's going to our bottom line that wouldn't have been there. So this report is driven from a couple of different things. Number one is our POS. On the left side of the screen, what you're seeing here are menu items. Those are POS buttons that are coming over from the POS. We're then able to link recipes to those, and those recipes are driving this cost, right? So we look at all of the ingredients of that recipe, and as soon as you get an invoice in that has a higher amount or whatever it is, these costs are updating. So this is updating every single night. So I can pull this and say, what was my most profitable item yesterday? That's a lot, obviously more meaningful than what was my most profitable item 3 months ago. So you'll be able to see all of that information there. I also really like to highlight the sales percentage. Maybe not so much on a day-to-day, week-to-week, but just understanding your menu, what's selling. So this sales percentage is just outlining that 10.4% of all of my burrito sales are this item, right? So that's basically what that's breaking out there. Awesome. So get that menu costing a lot more frequently and also more accurately because it's always up to date. Now, this is a big one. We hit on the P&L a little bit earlier, profit and loss report. I can't say enough, like getting this into the hands of your managers. It doesn't have to be the full cut off P&L, right? It can be prime cost. It can be an operation statement. However, we want to get them these reports. I have folks ask me all the time, hey, what kind of a report could I give my managers to see their COGS? Is there a reason you don't want them to have the P&L, the prime cost P&L, the real number, right? So we push folks to this all the time. A couple of things I want to point out about the P&L. 28 out of the box formats, right? So that means there's 28 different versions of this report, things like side by side, period over period, versus budget, all of those types of things. So tons of different formats for you to utilize. Because of our POS and vendor integrations, the P&L can technically be run at any time, right? There may be a couple of things below that prime cost line that need to be entered, like rent or certain expenses, maybe. But as far as sales, discounts, labor, and COGS, that information is all coming from those integrations and our ability to count an inventory like once a week, right? So we can have a truly accurate COGS report once a week if we do weekly inventory. So being able to run that anytime, obviously super valuable. We don't have to wait until 2 weeks after the period to get that report. Now, I mentioned this earlier, one report for both operations and accounting to view important restaurant metrics. Again, break down that wall. Let's both work from the same set of numbers. So my manager isn't surprised at the end of the month when COGS were 4 points higher than what they thought it was going to be, right? Let's actually look at the same report so we're all on the same page. Now, lastly, automating these via report subscriptions. We'll come back around to this in 2 slides, but I want to talk a little bit about the report subscription aspect as well, because that's just allowing our managers and ourselves to get reports without having to go press run on a report, right? So we'll come back around to that. Now, I do want to highlight business intelligence. So if we think back to that operations dashboard that I started with today, think of business intelligence as a customizable version of that, right? It's a lot more, but that is a great way to just kind of get in the mindset of what is business intelligence? It's a custom dashboarding and KPI reporting tool. It does work with that intraday that I mentioned that we offer with multiple POS systems. So we can have custom dashboards in here that update as often as up to every 15 minutes that are available right inside of our mobile app. Right? So we can pull up that app right there on the floor in the restaurant, right from the beach, wherever we are, right? Pull up that app, pull out our intelligence dashboards and see the numbers and the graphs and the points that are important to us. So I don't have to pull 3 reports to get, this number, that number, and the other. I've got it all neatly organized in a easy to use dashboard. So that's all we'll do on business intelligence, but definitely a very, very powerful tool that we can utilize to kind of clean up and just streamline that reporting experience. All right. Lastly, report subscriptions. If you've never set one of these up, if you are a Restaurant 365 user today out there, go set up a report subscription today, right? At the very least, go grab a flash report and schedule it to go out to yourself every day with all of your locations that you oversee, right? Set it up for your manager to see their location. Every morning, this report can go out to them, send it out at like 9 a.m., right? 8 a.m. They'll get a report with all of their sales, labor, overshort, paid out information, all of that good stuff, all in one clean little emailed out report. Now, essentially, any report in our system can be subscribed to. So you can say, hey, this report is going to go out on this frequency to these emails, and I want it to be in Excel or PDF or however you want it to be, right? So a great way to just make it, I don't even have to go pull this report. My managers get a P&L every week. I get, my 3 reports that I want to look at every week, and it all just happens seamlessly there. So check out those report subscriptions on our reporting page. Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to bring in Kevin and Kristen so we can do a little fireside chat here. There's Kristen. There's Kevin. Awesome. Great to see y'all. So we're going to jump in. We're going to do a little fireside chat. I've got a couple of questions we're going to run through. And I will say, let's start with Kristen on this first one, and then we can kind of go back and forth here. So Kristen, how has real-time data changed your approach to financial management?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. So we implemented Restaurant 365 a couple of years ago, and it has vastly sped up our month-end close process from an accounting standpoint. So we implemented the accounting product. And while it's not necessarily real time, Aaron talked about getting your P&Ls a couple of weeks after month end. Using R365 has helped us turn that turnaround time for financial statements much shorter. We also have some tools for food costs that we use. On one of our concepts, our managers count inventory every week. And so anytime they take an inventory, they're able to get that actual versus theoretical reporting that you were talking about. And then we also have some labor tracking tools that we use that help them track their labor on a daily basis, because we find if you wait till the end of the week or the end of the month, sometimes you're too far past your labor budget. You've blown those hourlies that Aaron showed on the screen, and it's really hard to make that up. But if they track it every day and sometimes even throughout the day using the hourly graphs, the optimal labor charts, things like that, then they're able to make those adjustments and ultimately enhance the profitability of the restaurant by doing that.
I love that. That's great. Yeah, and once it's too late, I mean, if we're committed to hitting that bonus, like what suffers, right? Our service and things like that. So
Yeah,
really great to
exactly.
see those labor pieces. That's awesome. Kevin, how about you? Real-time data changed your approach to financial management. How has that happened?
Yeah, for our organization, the big change in our approach has been kind of that challenge you talked about earlier with agility, not having outdated decision making that's happening in our organization. Even though we do a really good job of closing the books as quickly as possible, as accurately as possible, it's not going to replace real-time data. Being able to view that data, have action items off of that data, and really solve problems before they become a problem on the P&L statement is key. And none of us want to go to our supervisor and say, I have a problem, but I don't have a solution yet. It'd be much better if you came to them with, I've already solved it. I'll report it to you on this financial statement, but real-time data helped me get there quicker to know how to provide a solution.
That's awesome. That is great. Awesome. So with this question, let's start with Kevin. We'll go the other way this time. Kevin, do you have an example of how these insights have driven your operational improvements?
Yeah, there's two big ways in the last couple of years that it's improved for us. One's just labor in general. Always helps to see that in real time and how you're staffing your floor, managing your overtime if someone's getting close. We have a few unique stores that hire a lot of minors, and just being compliant with those state laws and keeping track of those hours is really key with real-time data. You can't screw that up later and look at the reporting. You got to manage that on the clock. And then I also think fraud, risk mitigation is important to us. We all work so hard for profitability in every dollar that comes in, and to see it go to waste or potential fraud happening, it's just never what you want to see. So whether it's just managing significant tips or tracking some voids that are on the clock, or suspicious transferring of items to different tickets, all things that kind of raise some red flags and that you want your management team to know about during the shift so they can address it right then and there. The employee's there, the action just happened, it's fresh, and you kind of prevent that opportunity from continuing in the future.
That's great. Thank you. So, Kristen, how do you have an example of how those insights have driven your operational improvements?
Yeah, so most of my restaurants are in the middle of Iowa, so we get a lot of weather throughout the year, whether that be blizzards in the winter or thunderstorms and tornadoes in the summer. And so when we're having a weather event, my director of operations and I will watch the real-time sales very, very closely. And so, for example, we just came through winter, and a couple of weeks ago we got some bad weather, and so we watch the real-time sales, and if the sales are really slow from 5 to 6, our dinner hour, then what we'll usually do is close our restaurants around 8 o'clock rather than staying open till our normal 10 p.m. closing time, because we know that we're just going to be burning money if we stay open till 10, because we don't really have the sales to support that. So real-time data really helps us in the instances when we have weather situations, which with where we're located, unfortunately, is more often than we wish it was, but that helps us a lot from sales. And then my managers also watch the sales throughout the day when they're managing their labor. Like I said, we have a tool that helps them track it every day, but then throughout the day, if the sales aren't there, they'll send someone home, or if they're really getting beat up, they'll call someone in. So
That's great. And honestly, that made me think of something that I hear a lot in places like that that have very weather-driven kind of successes and not successes. Being able to see that in your like sales forecasting and understanding like, hey, these 3 days weren't normal course of business because it was like snowing and tornadoing outside. So to be able to easily identify those days and remove those from the forecast just drives us again to that more accurate reporting and expectation of business. So
yeah, and R365 logbook is helpful for that too. So we'll sometimes go in there and make notations. So then this year, for instance, I was looking at sales comps, and our comps were like, we were up 50% on a couple of days. And it's like, well, that's because last year we were only open 3 hours because there was a blizzard, and I can go back in the logbook and see those notational entries there too that we've made. So that's something where R365 is really helpful for us.
that's great. I love that. Very cool. Okay, so last question. We'll start with you, Kristen. Any lessons that you've learned or best practices you could share for using real-time reporting effectively?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a CPA, love the spreadsheets, love the numbers. The people that work in my restaurants aren't necessarily that way. A lot of them are working in the restaurants because they didn't want a desk job. And so training them effectively to use the real-time data, even if it's maybe not their main skill set, and equipping them with the tools to do that. So giving them an app that's an easy to use app like the R365 Red app, or an app from your point of sale that will show them those sales and labor hours throughout the day, so that they can easily manage it. They're our frontline people. They're the ones who have to make the calls on, whether to send labor home or call in more labor. So just giving them the tools that they need to be successful in a format that works for them.
Love that. Getting that buy-in. That's awesome. Very cool. Kevin, any lessons you've learned or best practices that you could share for us using the real-time reporting?
Yeah, I've really learned that different people consume data in different ways or different preferences. It could just be generational gaps, could be just kind of different learning styles, but being able to send the data or have it be able to be pulled from the system in various different ways, just diversifying that I can have a subscription report sent to you, I can have it on a mobile app, you can log in and view the data, filter it, slice it any way you want. Has been really beneficial. You just kind of give everybody their options, and they learn the best way and consume the data according to how they process it best. And I also think the spirit of competition is always in our organization and the restaurant industry in general. So kind of gamifying the data in every way that you can is great. Whether it's kind of a red, yellow, green color scheme you throw on it, or kind of just kind of general trophies or icons that can say this is good, better, best. Everyone likes to kind of gamify it when you're in a competitive environment. So putting those two things together really helps our organization process the data in the best way possible.
That's awesome. I love that. I hear that a lot. Gamify it. Give us something to spark up that competitive nature again, give us that ownership of how our restaurants are running, and trust in the data. That's it. Very cool. All right. I think I went too many. Let me go back. Here we go.
That's
Are our
okay.
polls working?
Yes, I think it's finally working. So let me just throw this poll up before we get into our Q&A. So I'll leave this up just for a little bit. Make sure everybody gets a chance to answer. Okay, just starting to see some answers roll in. So just a little bit more. Okay, I'll go ahead and end the poll. And then we will go ahead and move on to Q&A. We have quite a few questions for you guys today. The first question, this one will be for you, Aaron. This person wants to know, how do they find the actual versus theoretical report in the software?
Yeah, so since I'm not screen sharing, it may be a little tough, but if you go to My Reports, it would be under Purchasing and Inventory section, since they're all subcategorized. There's also, it's kind of sneaky, in the top right, a search option. And if you type in actual there, you'll see all of our actual versus theoretical, above store, actual versus labor. So you can find those all there. I would also suggest our support center, because there's a lot of what we call report parameters. So settings on the report. So if you check out the support center article on any report, it'll kind of give you guidance into what those parameters mean and how to potentially run that report. Also, if you're an existing customer, chat with your CSM. They could probably help you run that report and make sure you're getting the most out of it.
Perfect. Okay, and then this one came in when we were on the actual versus theoretical report slide. They wanted to know what the name of the actual versus theoretical report is.
The name of it is actual
Yeah.
versus theoretical analysis.
Perfect. Okay, great. What is the difference between menu price analysis and menu costing?
Great question. So the menu costing is technically called the menu item analysis. That is our profitability report. It categorizes our menu item by stars and dogs and opportunities. So that's where we go to see how profitable our menu items are, right? What our margins are, those pieces. The menu price analysis is actually where we can run and set a goal for each menu item's profitability. And that report will actually spit out a price for us to sell that item at to hit that goal, right? So whether that be raising the price of an item or lowering the price of an item, that report will simply tell you, hey, if you sold this for $17.77, you would hit that number that you're looking to hit. So that's the difference between those two reports.
Great. Okay, if we run a report for yesterday without approving the DSS, will it still be accurate?
It will. So it will still show up. I will say if there's something that needs to change, like if something gets edited or anything like that, that number will change. But essentially, every report in our system is able to be run on unapproved transactions. So even though that DSS hasn't been reviewed or approved, those numbers will show up in our reporting because a lot of them run on unapproved transactions. So same for invoices as well.
Okay. And then is there a way to import our schedules from our payroll software?
Not currently. So with the actual versus scheduled things we looked at today, I probably should have mentioned that that is based on using Restaurant 365 scheduling, right? That may be something that comes down later down the road for reporting purposes, potentially in BI or somewhere like that. But today we do not have the ability to import schedules from outside systems.
Okay. And then here's one for Kristen and Kevin. How has real-time reporting impacted your COGS? Can you give an example of how it's helped keep those costs down?
I can start. So we have our managers track their food cost every week. So they have to take an inventory every week. So that's one of the things that can make COGS reporting more real time, is if you go from monthly or even twice monthly inventories to weekly inventories, because we find that if we wait longer than that, then sometimes food costs gets away from us. So we do the weekly inventories, and then they have to review their actual versus theoretical after that and go through some of their variances. And if they're above certain amounts, provide explanations. So our franchisor has provided us with some best-in-class variances for different categories and even specific items. So for, we're in a chicken concept, so here's what your chicken variance should be. And if they're over than that, then they have to provide explanations. And if they can't explain it, then that's where our director of operations works with them. And maybe we need to hold an additional training class or review what the best practices are that you need to be operating with to achieve those best-in-class margins. So accelerating inventories to more often would probably be my biggest tip, because it just helps keep a better eye on things.
Yeah, and just to add to that, our organization does a lot of LTOs and promos that are very specific windows, and you don't have a lot of time to order them or just keep on track with your PARs. So just seeing how they start out the first couple of days, not waiting till inventory or other weekly reports come out, gives our team and purchasing director a good idea of, are we ahead? Are we behind? Do we have too much? Do we need to shift it to another location? So seeing that data real time definitely helps with that.
Awesome. All right. And then how can I see all items coming from vendors within a period that are active?
So we actually have a couple of different reports for that. One of my favorite is the receiving by purchase item. That will break out all of your purchases of an individual item. It will break them out in a nice line by line format, no matter who the vendor was, but it does display vendor SKU information. We also have some other reports around that, like purchases by vendor and things like that. So what I would suggest, again, support center, I use it every day. I've been here 7 years. The support center, go type in purchases, and there will be probably 5 or 6 reports that'll show up there. Also, check out the key operations reports support center article. That'll actually line out reports that you can use daily, every 3 to 5 days after inventory, and it kind of prioritizes them in that manner, and then walks you through what each one does. So that would be a great place to start to kind of see what reports I should be using for those types of things. So that would be my suggestion.
Okay. And then last question, is there a way we can run reports like menu item analysis based on gross and not net sales?
I don't believe so, not right now. That is something that we can do in business intelligence. However, we wouldn't be pulling in, I don't believe in the canned version. I believe it's preset to a specific gross sales. So, or net sales, excuse me. That is partially on purpose, right? So when we look at that report, it does take out things like comps, right? Because what we want to do is view an item's profitability versus what actually happens. So we take the sales amount divided by the quantity of button presses. So basically the idea is I don't want to think, this mushroom burger is my best selling item when it gets comped off 100 times a day because people don't like it, right? So it's kind of built into that report in that manner on purpose so that we're not misled by what are our best performing items versus are not. But that is something that potentially has some wiggle room in things like business intelligence and maybe just the future of our canned reporting.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. Well, that is the end of our Q&A session. Well, I just want to say thank you to Aaron, Kristen, and Kevin for your time today. I also wanted to share this slide with those who are interested in hearing more from industry leaders like you saw today. We'd love to see you at our restaurant transformation tour this year. Our first stop is in New Orleans, which is next week, where we'll be hosting a one-day event filled with sessions tailored to different roles in the restaurant industry. It's a great opportunity to connect with fellow professionals and learn from each other. But if you can't make it to New Orleans, don't worry. We'll be in Dallas, San Diego, and New York later this year. So you can go ahead and scan that QR code on the screen for more details, and we hope to see you there. All right, this concludes our webinar. You will receive an email with a link to download a recording of the webinar to listen to again or share with your colleagues within the next few days. Thank you for joining, and we hope to see you all soon.